I'm Natalie, 29 years old, and partially paralyzed since I was 12. My own mother drove me deep into the forest, looked me in the eyes, and left me there to die. You were dead to me, she said before walking away. What she never realized was that we weren't alone in those woods. Someone had been watching us the entire time, someone who would change everything. If you're joining my story today, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, hit subscribe, and prepare yourself for the ultimate betrayal. Life before that fateful day in the woods wasn't perfect, but I never imagined my own mother would try to dispose of me like unwanted garbage. Growing up with Pamela as a mother meant walking on eggshells, constantly trying to meet impossible standards. She controlled every aspect of my life, from what I wore to who I could speak with, always under the guise of protecting me. My disability made her control even more suffocating. When I was 12, a car accident left me with partial paralysis on my left side. I could walk, but only with a specialized leg brace and a cane, and my left hand had limited dexterity. Daily tasks most people take for granted became monumental challenges. Showering, dressing, cooking, all required extra time and effort. Pamela would oscillate between smothering assistance and cold impatience, depending on her mood. "Natalie, let me do that," she'd snap, grabbing whatever I was struggling with. "We don't have all day for you to figure it out." As I approached 30, I desperately wanted independence. I'd been saving from my online graphic design job, hoping to move into an accessible apartment. This desire for freedom created unbearable tension between us. "After everything I've sacrificed for you," she'd say, tears instantly appearing whenever I mentioned moving out. "This is how you repay me? Who will take care of you? You can barely take care of yourself." Her words stung because they planted seeds of doubt. Maybe she was right. Maybe I couldn't survive on my own. But deep inside, I knew I had to try. The subtle shifts in her behavior began 6 months before the woods. Small things at first, like forgetting my medication or leaving items I needed on high shelves I couldn't reach. Her expressions changed too, a flash of something dark crossing her face when she thought I wasn't looking. Sometimes I'd catch her staring at me with such undisguised resentment that it made my stomach knot. Everything worsened when Roy moved in. He was her newest boyfriend, a loud, opinionated man with wandering eyes and a drinking problem. He made no effort to hide his annoyance at my presence. "How much longer is it going to take you to get down the damn hallway?" he'd grumble as I carefully navigated the narrow space with my cane. Financial pressure was crushing our household. My medical bills were substantial, even with insurance. Physical therapy, medications, equipment, doctor visits, all added up to a mountain of debt. I contributed what I could from my design work, but it wasn't enough. Late one night, I overheard them talking in the kitchen. "We can't keep doing this, Pamela," Roy said, his words slightly slurred. "She's draining us dry." "What am I supposed to do?" my mother responded, her voice brittle with frustration. "She's not your responsibility anymore. She's an adult. You've done your time. She can't live alone." "That's not your problem," Roy insisted. "We could be traveling, enjoying life. Instead, we're trapped taking care of a grown woman who should be someone else's burden." The silence that followed told me more than any words could. My mother didn't defend me. She didn't disagree. 2 weeks later, she proposed the trip. "Natalie, I've been thinking," she said over breakfast, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "We both need a break. How about a weekend getaway? Just you and me, like old times." Hope flickered inside me. Maybe she wanted to repair our relationship. Where would we go? "There's a beautiful retreat in the mountains. Fresh air, gorgeous scenery. They even have accessible trails and meditation sessions. It might help us both reset." I should have noticed the vagueness in her description. No name of the retreat, no specific location. But I was so desperate for connection, for any hint that she still cared, that I eagerly agreed. The week before our trip, I threw myself into preparations. I researched the mountain area, packed carefully, made sure I had all my medications and supplies. Pamela seemed distracted, disappearing for hours without explanation. Several times, I caught her in intense phone conversations that abruptly ended when I entered the room. The evening before we left, she acted oddly tender, cooking my favorite meal and reminiscing about my childhood. In hindsight, it wasn't nostalgia.
It was goodbye.
Roy watched us pack the car with an unsettling smile. "You two have a great time now," he said, winking at my mother in a way that made my skin crawl. As we pulled out of the driveway, I watched our house disappear in the side mirror, unaware that I would never see it again. The drive to the mountains stretched over 5 hours, filled with uncomfortable silence punctuated by forced small talk. I tried engaging my mother in conversation, asking about the retreat, the activities available, how long we'd stay. Her answers were curt and vague. "We'll see when we get there," became her mantra. The landscape transformed around us, suburban sprawl giving way to rolling farmland, then dense forest as we ascended into the mountain range. Under different circumstances, I would have been captivated by the majestic pines, the glimpses of wildlife, the crisp autumn air that greeted us when we stopped for gas. Instead, anxiety pooled in my stomach, growing heavier with each mile. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Pamela commented, gazing at the wilderness stretching to the horizon. Something in her voice sent a chill through me, a note of finality I couldn't quite place. Around noon, we stopped at a roadside diner, a faded building with peeling paint and a near-empty parking lot. My mother barely touched her food, checking her phone repeatedly. "I need to make a call," she announced abruptly, sliding from the booth. "Order us some coffee." Through the window, I watched her pace beside the car, gesturing emphatically during what appeared to be an intense conversation. When she returned, her expression had hardened into determination, all pretense of maternal warmth abandoned. Back on the road, we turned onto increasingly remote routes, the pavement eventually giving way to gravel. The GPS signal flickered and died. No more road signs appeared. "Are you sure this is right?" I asked, unease growing as we lurched down a bumpy Forest Service road. "I don't see any signs for a retreat. It's off the beaten path," she replied, knuckles white against the steering wheel. "Very exclusive." After another hour, she pulled onto a nearly invisible dirt track. Branches scraped against the car windows as we pushed deeper into wilderness that showed no signs of human development, let alone an accessible retreat. When the path became too narrow to continue, she parked in a small clearing and turned off the engine. Silence enveloped us, broken only by distant birdsong and the occasional rustle of leaves. "We walk from here," she announced. "Walk where?" "I don't see anything." I scanned our surroundings, seeing only dense forest. "And you know I can't hike far, especially on uneven ground." "Just a short distance," she insisted, already retrieving a small backpack from the trunk. "The trail is just ahead." Something was deeply wrong, but I still couldn't comprehend the full horror awaiting me. Dutifully, I struggled out of the car, adjusted my leg brace, and gripped my cane tightly. The trail was barely visible, a slight depression in the underbrush that disappeared into thick trees. Every step was treacherous, roots and rocks threatening to topple me. Sweat beaded on my forehead as I concentrated on each movement, my cane sinking into soft earth, nearly useless. Pamela strode ahead, not once looking back to check on my progress. "Mom, please slow down," I called, breathing heavily. "I can't keep up." She paused without turning around. "Hurry up, Natalie. We don't have all day." We continued for nearly 40 minutes, moving deeper into the forest. My leg muscles screamed in protest, unused to such demanding terrain. The distance from the car grew concerning. If I fell or needed emergency medical attention, how would help reach us? "Where exactly is this retreat?" I finally demanded, stopping to lean against a tree trunk, legs trembling with exhaustion. "Just a bit further," she called over her shoulder, continuing forward. Unknown to us, we weren't alone in those woods. Later, I would learn that Marcus had been photographing wildlife in a blind about 200 yards away. An experienced wilderness photographer, he'd spotted us immediately, his instincts alerting him that something wasn't right. A woman with obvious mobility challenges being rushed through difficult terrain by an impatient companion raised immediate red flags. Through his telephoto lens, he began documenting our progress, initially out of concern, then growing alarm as our journey continued with no visible destination. I felt his presence only as a prickling sensation on the back of my neck, the strange feeling of being watched. Turning several times, I searched the dense foliage, but saw nothing unusual. Just trees, undergrowth, and the vast indifference of nature stretching in all directions. "Mom," I called again, genuine fear now creeping into my voice. "I really need to rest. And we should turn back soon, it'll be getting dark in a few hours." She finally stopped, turning to face me with an expression I'd never seen before. Something had changed, as though a mask had slipped away, revealing a stranger beneath. "Just a bit further," she repeated, her voice hollow. "There's something I want to show you." We reached a small clearing as the afternoon light began to fade. Tall pines surrounded the open space, their upper branches swaying in a breeze that didn't reach the forest floor. Pamela stopped in the center of the clearing and set down her backpack. "Is this it?" I asked, looking around for any sign of the promised retreat. "Where are the buildings?" She didn't answer immediately, instead unzipping the backpack and removing a bottle of water, which she placed on a fallen log. Next came a small first aid kit, a protein bar, and a thin emergency blanket. She arranged them neatly, like placing items on an altar. "What are you doing?" The creeping dread that had accompanied our entire journey crystallized into sharp fear. "Natalie," she said, finally looking directly at me. Her eyes were cold, emotionless. "This is where you'll be staying."
Ilauga nervously, certainly de misunderstood.
"What are you talking about? Where's the retreat?" "There is no retreat. There never was." The words hung between us, impossible to process. "I don't understand. I can't do this anymore," she continued, her voice eerily calm. "Taking care of you, the bills, the constant demands. You've ruined my life for 17 years. The world tilted beneath me. "Mom, please, whatever's wrong, we can fix it. Let's just go back to the car and talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about. I've made my decision." She gestured to the items she'd arranged. "I'm not completely heartless. These will give you a chance." Reality crashed down. My own mother had led me miles into the wilderness, knowing my disability made it nearly impossible for me to find my way back alone. "You can't leave me here," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I won't survive." "That's not my concern anymore." She zipped the empty backpack. "I've done my time. 17 years of my life wasted on you. I want freedom." I lunged forward, grabbing her arm.
"Please don't do this."
"I'm your daughter." She wrenched away violently. "My daughter died in that car accident. What came back was just a burden, a constant reminder of everything I lost." Her face contorted with long-suppressed rage. "Do you know what it's like? Every day, watching you struggle with the simplest tasks. Having to plan every moment of my life around your needs." Tears streamed down my face. "I never asked for this. I never wanted to be disabled." "Neither did I," she shouted. "But I'm the one who paid the price. No more." "People will look for me," I said desperately. "They'll know what you did." A cold smile spread across her face. "Who will look? You have no friends. No other family. Who cares? And I've already planned what to tell the police when I report you missing tomorrow. How you wandered off during our hiking trip, how I searched for hours before getting help." She began walking away, back toward the trail. "Mom," I screamed, stumbling after her, my leg brace catching on the uneven ground. I fell hard, pain shooting through my hip. "Please. You can't do this." She paused at the edge of the clearing, turning back one last time. "You were dead to me a long time ago, Natalie. This just makes it official." Then she was gone, swallowed by the darkening forest. I don't know how long I lay there, dirt pressing into my cheek, sobs tearing through my body. The enormity of the betrayal was too vast to comprehend. The woman who gave birth to me, who had been my primary caretaker, had just left me to die. When the initial shock subsided, Panic took its place. I struggled to my feet, leaning heavily on my cane. "Help!" I screamed, my voice echoing uselessly among the trees. "Somebody help me." Only forest sounds answered. The rustle of leaves, a distant bird call, the faint gurgle of running water somewhere beyond the clearing. I was alone, miles from any road, with limited mobility and few supplies. I tried to follow the path we'd taken, but Pamela had moved quickly, and the faint trail was already difficult to discern in the fading light. After 20 minutes of struggling through underbrush, I realized I was only getting myself more lost. Returning to the clearing seemed my only option. At least there, I had the few supplies she'd left. The rational part of my brain, somehow still functioning through the trauma, knew I needed to conserve energy and stay in one place if there was any hope of rescue. The temperature dropped rapidly as darkness fell. I fumbled with the emergency blanket, the thin mylar crinkling loudly as I wrapped it around my shoulders. The protein bar would have to wait until tomorrow. Conservation of resources was critical now. Sleep was impossible. Every sound in the darkness became a threat, every shadow a predator. My mind replayed my mother's words on endless loop, each repetition a fresh wound. The betrayal was so complete, so carefully planned, that I struggled to accept it was real. Had she always hated me? Had every act of care since my accident been a performance, hiding her true feelings? The thought that my entire relationship with my mother might have been a lie was almost more painful than being abandoned. As the night wore on, physical discomfort joined my emotional agony. The ground was hard and cold beneath me. My muscles spasmed from the day's exertion. Without my evening medication, pain from my old injuries intensified. I wondered if this was her plan all along. Not a quick death, but a slow, torturous one. First the emotional destruction of her betrayal, then the physical suffering of exposure, hunger, and thirst. But somewhere in those dark hours, as tears dried on my cheeks, determination began to form. She wanted me to die here, to disappear and free her from responsibility. That knowledge ignited something in me, a fierce resolve. "I won't give her what she wants," I whispered to the indifferent trees. "I won't die here." I didn't know how I would survive, only that I had to try. Unknown to me, Marcus had observed the entire scene from a distance. Through his camera lens, he documented my mother's abandonment, her callous arrangement of minimal supplies, her final cruel words before departing. Ethical dilemmas had kept him from intervening immediately, uncertainty about the situation, and concern about frightening a vulnerable woman alone in the woods by suddenly appearing. But as night fell, he began formulating a plan to help while respecting boundaries that wouldn't cause additional trauma. That first night, as I huddled beneath the inadequate emergency blanket, he kept watch from a distance, ensuring no wild animals approached the clearing. A silent guardian I didn't yet know existed. Dawn arrived with cruel brightness, birds announcing the new day with cheerful songs that mocked my situation. Every muscle in my body ached from the cold ground and stress. My mouth felt like sandpaper, throat raw from crying and screaming. The reality of my situation hit with renewed force in the harsh morning light. I took inventory of my supplies. 1 water bottle, about 16 ounces, a basic first aid kit containing bandages and antiseptic wipes, 1 protein bar, and the emergency blanket. Nothing to signal for help, no phone, no way to purify water once the bottle was empty. My leg brace and cane were intact, but the brace was designed for urban environments, not wilderness survival. The protein bar provided momentary relief from hunger, but I knew the small boost of calories wouldn't last long. Water was my most precious resource, so I took only tiny sips, trying to make it last. Memories of childhood camping trips with my father before my parents' divorce surfaced unexpectedly. He taught me basic wilderness orientation, how to identify north using the sun, how to recognize certain plants. But those trips had been carefully supervised adventures with proper equipment, nothing like this desperate situation. My father. Would he even know I was missing? We'd lost touch years ago, my mother systematically cutting him from my life after their bitter divorce. I wondered if he still lived in Michigan, if he ever thought about me. The The sound of running water drew me from these thoughts. Following it as best I could with my limited mobility, I discovered a small stream about 30 yards from the clearing. The water looked clear, but I knew drinking it unfiltered risked serious illness. Still, its discovery gave me hope. I could at least clean myself a bit. The cool water on my face provided momentary relief. I sat beside the stream, watching the water flow over rocks, carrying small leaves and twigs on its journey. Had my entire life been like that, just carried along by my mother's current, never steering my own course? As I returned to the clearing, something caught my eye. The protein bar wrapper I'd carefully placed inside my water bottle for trash was now lying on the ground several feet away. I was certain I hadn't removed it or dropped it. A curious animal, perhaps? But then I noticed other small changes. The first aid kit was positioned differently, slightly open rather than closed as I'd left it. The emergency blanket, which I'd folded and placed on the log, was now neatly arranged on a bed of pine needles, forming a softer sitting area. Someone had been in the clearing while I was at the stream. "Hello," I called, scanning the surrounding forest. "Is someone there?" Only forest sounds answered, but the hairs on my arms stood up. I wasn't alone. The second day brought new challenges. Hunger became a constant companion, a gnawing emptiness that made every movement require conscious effort. I rationed the last of my water, knowing dehydration would kill me faster than starvation. Memories of my mother surfaced relentlessly, both good and bad. Birthday celebrations, holiday traditions, quiet evenings watching movies together. Had they all been fake? Had she been planning this abandonment for years, just waiting for the right opportunity? I remembered how she'd changed after my accident, the subtle shift from nurturing to resentful. How she'd introduced me to others. "This is my daughter, Natalie." She was in an accident, always defining me by my disability, always with that undercurrent of martyrdom in her voice. The afternoon brought dark clouds and distant thunder. Rain would solve my water problem but create others. I had no real shelter, and getting wet in the cooling temperatures could lead to hypothermia. Using my cane, I managed to arrange fallen branches against a large pine tree, creating a crude lean-to. The task exhausted me, each movement a battle against pain and weakness. But seeing the completed structure brought a surprising sense of accomplishment. I had built something with my own hands, something my mother would never have believed me capable of. As the first raindrops fell, I huddled under my shelter, emergency blanket wrapped tightly around me. The rain intensified, a proper downpour that tested my makeshift roof. It leaked in several places, but still provided better protection than nothing. The storm lasted about an hour, leaving the forest dripping and fresh. I placed my water bottle where it could catch drips from the trees, slowly refilling it with relatively clean rainwater. As evening approached, hunger became almost unbearable. I'd never gone this long without food before. Weakness made every movement a monumental effort, and dizziness hit whenever I stood too quickly. That's when I found it, a small package wrapped in waterproof material, placed at the edge of my clearing. Inside was a sandwich, an apple, and a note written on waterproof paper. "You are not alone. This food is safe. I am keeping watch." The handwriting was unfamiliar, masculine in its angularity. I stared at the food, paralyzed by conflicting emotions. Relief at potential rescue warred with fear of this unknown observer. Was this a trap? Another cruel game? Hunger won the debate. I devoured the sandwich and apple, almost crying at the simple pleasure of food. The note I read repeatedly, trying to divine intention from the few simple words. Someone was watching me. Someone who hadn't yet revealed themselves but wanted me to know they were there. Someone who had witnessed my abandonment? That night, as I huddled in my improved shelter, the mysterious benefactor had reinforced it while I slept. I felt something I hadn't expected to feel again. Hope. The third day brought more evidence of my silent guardian. Footprints in the mud that weren't mine. A small stack of dry firewood appeared near my shelter, along with matches in a waterproof container. Most surprisingly, a bottle of water with a proper filter attached to it, allowing me to safely drink from the stream. Each gift was accompanied by a brief note. Use these for warmth. This makes the water safe. More food tomorrow. I began to leave my own messages, scratched in dirt or spelled out with pebbles. Who are you? Please help me. Why are you hiding? No direct answers came, but the supplies continued to appear when I wasn't looking. It became a strange dance, this communication with an unseen presence. Despite the danger of my situation, I found myself curious, even eager to discover what would appear next. On the fourth day, I heard a camera shutter click. Turning quickly, I caught a glimpse of movement behind a distant tree, too fast to see clearly. I know you're there. I called out. Please, I'm not afraid. I just want to talk. Silence answered, but I felt watched, evaluated. Was my observer deciding if I was trustworthy or planning something sinister? That night, lying beside my small fire, successfully lit after several attempts, I made a decision. My passive waiting needed to end. Whatever my observer's intentions, continuing this hiding game wouldn't get me rescued. Tomorrow, I would set a trap of my own. The fifth morning dawned clear and cool. My body had somewhat adjusted to sleeping outdoors, though pain remained a constant companion without my medication. The weakness from hunger had plateaued thanks to the mysterious food deliveries, though I remained dangerously undernourished. My plan was simple, but required timing and patience. I would pretend to leave the clearing, make enough noise to be convincing, then circle back quietly and wait. When my observer came to leave the daily supplies, I would finally see them. I gathered my meager possessions, speaking aloud as if planning a day of exploration. Then I set off toward the stream, deliberately making noise by striking trees with my cane and rustling through underbrush. After about 10 minutes, I carefully retraced my steps, moving as silently as my condition allowed, approaching the clearing from a different angle. Finding a concealed spot behind a fallen tree, I settled into wait, ignoring the discomfort of my awkward position. 20 minutes passed. 30. I began to wonder if my plan had failed. Then movement caught my eye. A tall figure emerged from the trees on the opposite side of the clearing, moving with the confidence of someone familiar with the forest. A man, bearded, dressed in earth-toned outdoor clothing. He carried a backpack and a professional camera with a long lens hung around his neck. He approached my shelter cautiously, looking around for signs of my return. From a pocket, he withdrew a small package, presumably containing food. As he bent to place it near my fire pit, I emerged from hiding. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice stronger than I expected. He straightened instantly, startled but not fleeing. For a long moment, we regarded each other across the clearing, mutual wariness evident in our postures. "My name is Marcus," he finally said, his voice deep and calm. "I've been trying not to frighten you. By watching me secretly for days?" I kept my distance, cane gripped tightly, ready to use as a weapon if necessary. "I saw what happened," he replied simply. "I saw that woman leave you here." The direct reference to my abandonment hit like a physical blow. "You were here that day? You saw everything." He nodded, slinging his camera forward slightly. "I document wildlife in these mountains. I was photographing a fox den when I spotted you two. Something seemed wrong about the situation. And you just watched?" Anger flared suddenly. "You watched her abandon me and did nothing?" "I wasn't sure what I was seeing at first," he explained, not defensively but matter-of-factly. "By the time I understood, she was already gone. I needed to assess the situation carefully. A strange man approaching a stranded woman in the wilderness could cause more fear than help." His logic was sound, but emotion overrode reason. "I could have died waiting for you to assess the situation." "I made sure that wouldn't happen," he countered gently. "The supplies, the shelter improvements. I was protecting you while figuring out the best approach." My legs, weak from days of hardship, began to tremble. Marcus noticed immediately, gesturing to the log beside the fire pit. "Please sit. I have more food and information you should know." Warily, I made my way to the log, keeping distance between us. He remained standing, making no move to approach closer. That woman, he began. Your mother? I nodded, throat tight. After leaving you, she didn't go far up the trail before meeting someone. A man in a blue truck. They embraced, seemed to celebrate. He unclipped his camera. I documented everything. He turned the camera display toward me, but didn't approach. Instead, he set it on a stump halfway between us and stepped back, allowing me to view it without coming near him. The images were clear, devastating. My mother, emerging from the forest, face triumphant. Roy waiting beside his distinctive blue pickup. Their embrace, champagne being poured into plastic cups. A toast, smiles, another embrace. Photographs that documented not just abandonment, but celebration of it. There's more, Marcus said quietly. 2 days ago, while getting supplies in town, I overheard talk about a missing woman. Your mother filed a report claiming you wandered off during a hike and she couldn't find you. Search and rescue operations are focused on the wrong area, miles from here. The calculated cruelty of it staggered me. Not content to merely abandon me, she was actively misdirecting any potential rescuers. Why are you helping me? I asked, suddenly exhausted. You don't know me. Marcus considered the question seriously. I believe people should help each other. When I saw someone deliberately leave a disabled person in the wilderness, I couldn't just walk away. But you didn't immediately help either, I pointed out. I needed to be careful, he acknowledged. I didn't know your relationship to that woman, whether you might defend her despite what she did, whether you'd trust a stranger. The wilderness can be dangerous, but people can be more dangerous. His caution made sense, however frustrating. So what now? My cabin is about 3 miles from here, he explained. It has satellite internet, a phone. We can contact authorities with the evidence I've gathered. The offer of real shelter, communication, potential rescue was overwhelming. Yet caution still held me back. How do I know I can trust you? This could be another trap. He nodded, respecting my suspicion. You don't know. All I can offer is choice. I'll leave you the supplies I brought today. My cabin location is written on that paper. You can come on your own terms when you're ready. He gestured to the package he'd set down. Or not at all. I'll continue bringing supplies either way. The sincerity in his voice and the respect for my autonomy swayed me more than any reassurances could have. In that moment, I made a decision that would change everything. I'll come with you, I said. But I'm keeping my cane where I can use it if needed. A smile briefly crossed his face. I'd expect nothing less. The journey to Marcus's cabin was arduous. 3 miles through rough terrain would be challenging for anyone, but with my disability, it became a grueling test of endurance. Marcus matched his pace to mine, never showing impatience, offering support only when absolutely necessary, and always asking permission first. We reached the cabin as evening shadows lengthened. It was small but solid, a true wilderness dwelling rather than a vacation home. Solar panels on the roof, a rainwater collection system, garden beds surrounding it. Inside was simple but comfortable. Wood stove, basic furniture, walls lined with books and photography equipment. The bathroom's through there, he indicated a door. There's hot water if you want to shower. I'll prepare some food. The prospect of a real shower after 5 days in the wilderness brought tears to my eyes. Privacy, hot water, soap, these simple luxuries now seemed miraculous. When I emerged, clean and wearing borrowed clothes that hung loosely on my frame, Marcus had prepared a simple but hearty vegetable stew. He kept conversation light as I ate, seeming to understand my need to process everything. Only after the meal, sitting with mugs of tea by the wood stove, did we address the situation fully. I have a satellite phone, he said. We can call the authorities tonight or wait until morning. Your choice. I stared into my tea, thinking of my mother's betrayal, the calculated plan, the false missing person report. Will they believe me? It's her word against mine. Marcus gestured to his camera. Not anymore. I have documented evidence of the abandonment, their celebration afterward, and your condition in the wilderness. Plus, your injuries and medical condition will speak for themselves. The reality of justice, of consequences for what my mother had done, suddenly seemed possible. But with it came a wave of grief, so powerful it stole my breath. "She's my mother," I whispered, tears falling. How could she do this? How could anyone do this to their child? Marcus remained silent, allowing me space for this necessary grief. There were no adequate words of comfort for such a profound betrayal. When the tears subsided, determination took their place. "Let's call in the morning," I decided. "I need one night of real rest first." He nodded, showing me to a small guest room. "Take whatever time you need. You're safe here." That night, in a real bed, warm and clean for the first time in nearly a week, I began to truly believe those words might be true. Morning brought renewed clarity and purpose. After a night of actual rest and another hot meal, I felt physically stronger than I had in days. The emotional wounds remained raw, but the shock had begun to transform into resolve. Marcus's cabin, in daylight, revealed itself as both a functional dwelling and a photographer's workspace. One room served as a studio and office, with high-end computer equipment and printers for his wildlife photography business. This, he explained, was how he managed to live so remotely while still maintaining a professional career. "I process and submit images from here, ship prints to galleries in the city," he told me over breakfast. "Only go into town about once a week for supplies." Using his satellite phone, we contacted the county sheriff's office. Marcus spoke first, explaining he was reporting information about a missing person case, then handed the phone to me. The detective who took my statement was initially skeptical, but his tone changed as I provided specific details about my mother, Roy, the abandonment, and the false report. When I mentioned the photographic evidence, he requested we bring it to the station immediately. "They're sending a vehicle," Marcus informed me after ending the call. "Should be here in about 2 hours. The road doesn't come all the way to the cabin, so we'll need to meet them at the access point." While waiting, Marcus transferred the photographs to his laptop, organizing them chronologically to clearly show the sequence of events. The images were more devastating than I'd realized, clearly documenting my mother's deliberate abandonment, her rendezvous with Roy, their celebration, and my subsequent days of struggling to survive. "These will be difficult for you to look at," he warned before showing me the complete set. "But you should see everything before the police do." He was right. The images were brutal in their clarity. Particularly painful were the ones taken immediately after my mother left, showing me collapsed on the ground, openly weeping. Marcus had captured my initial panic, my attempts to follow, my eventual return to the clearing as darkness approached. The progression of photos documented my deterioration over days, but also my resourcefulness, my attempts at creating shelter, finding water. "I look so small," I whispered, seeing myself huddled under the emergency blanket that first night. "You are stronger than you appear," Marcus replied simply. The sheriff's deputies arrived precisely when expected, a man and woman in official vehicles. They took initial statements from both of us, examined some of the key photographs, then requested we follow them to the station for formal interviews and evidence submission. Marcus drove us in his truck, following the patrol car through winding mountain roads back to civilization. The return to populated areas was jarring after days in the wilderness, buildings and traffic suddenly seeming chaotic and overwhelming. At the sheriff's station, we were separated for individual interviews. I spent 3 hours recounting every detail, from my relationship with my mother to Roy's arrival, the financial pressures, the trip proposal, and finally the abandonment itself. The detectives recorded everything, occasionally asking clarifying questions, but mostly letting me speak uninterrupted. When I finished, the female detective, Sergeant Rivera, informed me that officers had already visited my mother's home with preliminary questioning. "She's maintaining that you wandered off during a hike, and she searched extensively before reporting you missing," Rivera explained. "She's playing the role of distraught mother very convincingly. Without Mr. Wilson's photographs, this would be much harder to prove." "Will you arrest her?" I asked. "We're building the case now. The district attorney will make the final charging decisions, but attempted murder, criminal abandonment, filing a false report, those are all on the table." The reality of criminal charges against my own mother felt surreal. Despite everything, part of me still struggled with the finality of this rupture, the knowledge that our relationship was irreparably destroyed. While I provided my statement, Marcus submitted his photographs and video as evidence, allowing technicians to verify their authenticity and establish the exact timeline. His careful documentation, professional equipment, and GPS-tagged images provided irrefutable proof of what had occurred. Late that afternoon, as we prepared to leave the station, Rivera approached with unexpected news. "We've just brought your mother and Roy Davidson in for formal questioning. They're here now," she said, watching my reaction carefully. "Would you want to observe the interview? You'd be behind one-way glass. They wouldn't see you." My heart raced at the prospect of seeing my mother again, this time as her victim rather than her daughter. "Yes," I decided. "I need to hear what she says." Marcus offered to wait in the lobby, giving me privacy for this deeply personal moment. Rivera led me to a small observation room with a large window looking into an interview room. Through the glass, I saw my mother sitting at a table, hands clasped tightly in front of her. She looked smaller than I remembered, her carefully maintained appearance beginning to fray under stress. Detective Martinez entered the interview room, carrying a folder of documents. He began with standard questions, establishing identity and relationship to the missing person me. My mother played her role perfectly, voice breaking as she described her missing daughter, her desperate search, her sleepless nights waiting for news. Then Martinez placed the first photograph on the table. It showed her standing in the clearing, facing me, the emergency supplies arranged on the log. "Can you explain this photograph, Mrs. Andrews?" he asked. The color drained from my mother's face. "Where did you get that? What is this?" Martinez placed another photograph beside it, showing her walking away while I reached toward her, clearly distraught. "These were taken 5 days ago in the Pinetop Wilderness area," he explained calmly. "We have dozens more documenting your abandonment of your disabled daughter and your subsequent celebration with Mr. Davidson." My mother's performance collapsed instantly. Her eyes darted around the room, calculating, assessing options. "I want a lawyer," she said finally. "That's your right," Martinez acknowledged. "But Natalie has been found, alive, despite your actions. She's provided a full statement about your plan to abandon her in the wilderness." For just a moment, genuine shock registered on my mother's face. She hadn't expected me to survive. The realization hit me with physical force. She had truly intended for me to die out there. In the adjacent interview room, Roy was crumbling faster than my mother. Confronted with the evidence, he quickly turned on her, claiming the abandonment was entirely her idea, that he had only gone along with it out of love for her. "She planned the whole thing," he insisted. Said her daughter was ruining her life, draining their finances. Said nobody would question if a disabled woman got lost in the woods and was never found. His betrayal of my mother mirrored her betrayal of me, a cycle of selfishness and abandonment continuing its destructive pattern. I watched it all with strange detachment, as though observing characters in a film rather than people who had nearly ended my life. When both interviews concluded, Rivera asked if I wanted to speak directly with my mother. "She's asked to see you," she explained. "You're under no obligation to agree." The request surprised me. What could she possibly have to say? Curiosity and a need for final closure won out over apprehension. "Yes," I decided. "I'll see her." They arranged a supervised meeting in a conference room, with both Rivera and Martinez present. When I entered, using my cane for support, my mother's eyes widened in genuine shock. "Natalie," she whispered, "you're really alive." "No thanks to you," I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. She leaned forward, desperation in her eyes. "You don't understand. I was under so much pressure. Roy convinced me. I wasn't thinking clearly." "Stop," I interrupted. "I heard Roy's interview. This was your plan. You meant for me to die out there." Her facade cracked further. "You've ruined everything. My life, my relationships, my finances. Everything always revolves around your needs, your disability. I just wanted freedom." The raw honesty of her hatred was almost refreshing after years of masked resentment. At least now the truth was exposed, ugly as it was. I wanted freedom too, I told her quietly. I wanted independence, a life of my own. I never asked to be disabled. I never asked to be your burden. What happens now? She asked, suddenly looking old and defeated. Now you face consequences for attempting to murder your daughter, Martinez interjected. The district attorney will determine specific charges. My mother's eyes never left mine. Will you testify against me? Your own mother? The question held both threat and plea, a final attempt at manipulation. In that moment, I felt the last thread of emotional connection between us sever completely. Yes, I answered simply. I will tell the truth about what you did. As they led her away, she looked back once, and I saw something I'd never seen in her eyes before. Fear. For the first time in our relationship, she was the vulnerable one, facing a future shaped by her own terrible choices. I left the interview room feeling simultaneously empty and unburdened, as though I'd set down an immense weight I'd carried so long I'd forgotten it wasn't part of me. Marcus was waiting in the lobby, his calm presence somehow grounding amid the emotional turbulence of the day. It's done, I told him. He nodded understanding. Where would you like to go now? I hadn't considered this practical question of immediate next steps. My home was a crime scene. I had no family to turn to. I don't know, I admitted. I don't have anywhere. My cabin is available as long as you need, he offered without hesitation.
No expectations, no timeline.
Just a safe place while you figure things out. The generosity of this near stranger who had already saved my life brought fresh tears to my eyes. Thank you, I whispered. I think I'd like that. The weeks following my mother's arrest unfolded in a blur of legal proceedings, medical appointments, and media attention. The story of a mother abandoning her disabled daughter in the wilderness captured public imagination, generating headlines and interview requests I mostly declined. My mother and Roy both faced serious charges. The district attorney pursued attempted murder, criminal abandonment, false reporting, and conspiracy charges against my mother. Roy, turning state's evidence in exchange for leniency, faced lesser, but still significant charges. Both remained in custody, unable to post the substantial bail set by a judge who called their actions a new depth of human cruelty. Throughout this chaos, Marcus's cabin remained my sanctuary. He offered the guest room indefinitely, making clear that my presence was welcome rather than intrusive. He helped me navigate the overwhelming practical and emotional aftermath, driving me to appointments, helping me obtain new identification documents, and simply providing quiet company when the world became too much. One unexpected outcome of the media coverage was that my story reached my father, David, who had been searching for me for years. My mother had systematically intercepted his letters and calls, telling him I wanted no contact while telling me he had abandoned us. Our reunion, arranged through the Victim Services Coordinator, was tentative at first, years of manufactured distance creating initial awkwardness. But as we talked, sharing our separate versions of the past, genuine connection began to rebuild. I never stopped looking for you, he told me, voice breaking. Your mother changed addresses, phone numbers, even last names. Every time I got close, you'd disappear again. Learning that I had a parent who had wanted me, who had tried to remain in my life, was healing in ways I hadn't anticipated. David had remarried, and his wife Catherine welcomed me with immediate warmth. They lived several states away, but visited regularly as I recovered. The physical recovery was substantial. 5 days in the wilderness had left me malnourished, dehydrated, and with various injuries. My existing disability had been exacerbated by the ordeal, requiring intensive physical therapy to regain previous function. Marcus drove me to these appointments without complaint, waiting patiently through hour-long sessions. Emotional recovery proved more challenging. Nightmares plagued my sleep, vivid recreations of the abandonment or variations where Marcus never appeared and I died alone in the forest. A trauma therapist helped me process these dreams, along with the profound betrayal that had caused them. What your mother did wasn't about you, Dr. Linden explained during one session. It was about her inability to accept life's challenges, her own selfishness and cruelty. Nothing about her actions reflects your worth. Intellectually, I understood this. Emotionally, acceptance came more slowly. How does one reconcile being so disposable to the person who gave you life? As my strength returned, I began exploring options for my future. The criminal case would eventually provide restitution, and a civil lawsuit was likely to follow, but immediate financial independence remained challenging. My online graphic design work had evaporated during my absence, clients having moved on when projects weren't completed. Marcus suggested a collaboration that surprised me. "I need help with the business side of my photography," he explained. "Website updates, client communication, print sales. Your design background would be perfect. We could split the income from any increase in sales." The offer was tempting, not just financially, but as a path toward rebuilding my sense of purpose and contribution. I accepted cautiously, beginning with small projects that gradually expanded as my confidence returned. Working together shifted our relationship subtly. What had begun as rescuer and victim evolved into a balanced partnership, each of us contributing valuable skills to a shared enterprise. His wildlife photography sales increased substantially with my marketing improvements, while I gained financial stability and professional fulfillment. As summer arrived, Marcus began teaching me wilderness skills adapted to my physical capabilities. How to identify edible plants, navigate using natural landmarks, create emergency signals. What had been a place of terror slowly transformed into a landscape of beauty and possibility. "The wilderness isn't inherently dangerous," he explained as we identified bird calls along a gentle trail. "It's neutral, neither cruel nor kind. Understanding it removes the fear." This philosophy extended beyond nature into my healing journey. My mother's betrayal wasn't a reflection of my worth, merely the action of one damaged person making terrible choices. In July, I testified at my mother's preliminary hearing. Facing her across the courtroom was less traumatic than I'd feared. She seemed diminished somehow, her power over me dissolved by her own actions and my subsequent growth. Her attorney attempted to paint her as a desperate caretaker pushed beyond limits by the burden of a disabled child. The strategy backfired spectacularly, particularly when Marcus's photographs were entered into evidence, showing the celebration immediately following the abandonment. The judge ruled there was more than sufficient evidence to proceed to trial, though prosecutors indicated plea negotiations were ongoing. Roy had already accepted a deal in exchange for testimony, receiving a 10-year sentence with possibility of parole after 7. The media attention brought unexpected opportunities. Advocacy organizations for disabled individuals reached out, inviting me to share my story at events highlighting abuse and neglect issues. Initially reluctant, I eventually agreed to a small speaking engagement that led to others. Finding my voice as an advocate helped transform my victimization into something meaningful, a painful experience that might help prevent others from suffering similar fates. Each time I spoke, the narrative became less about what was done to me and more about what I had survived, what I was building from the ashes. By autumn, I had saved enough to begin considering my own housing. The idea of leaving Marcus's cabin generated conflicting emotions. Independence had always been my goal, yet the thought of moving away from the person who had saved my life, who had become essential to my daily happiness, created unexpected grief. On a crisp October evening, sitting on the cabin porch watching sunset paint the mountains gold, I finally voiced these thoughts. "I've been looking at accessible apartments in town," I began tentatively. Marcus nodded, expression neutral. "That makes sense. You've been working toward independence. But I'm not sure I want to leave." The admission felt both vulnerable and liberating. "This place, working with you, it feels right." He was quiet for a long moment. "I don't want you to leave either," he finally said. "But I want whatever choice you make to be truly yours, not influenced by gratitude or convenience." "What if my choice is to stay because this is where I'm happiest?" I asked. Not out of obligation or fear, but because what we've built together matters to me. The smile that spread across his face held answer enough. but his words confirmed it. Then I'd say we should build proper accessible features into the cabin and make this your permanent home, however you want that to look. In that moment, I recognized how far I'd come from the desperate woman abandoned in the woods. I had found not just physical safety, but emotional home, not just survival, but purpose. The legal proceedings continued their slow course. My mother eventually accepted a plea deal, receiving a 25-year sentence with no possibility of parole for at least 18 years. I attended the sentencing hearing, not for vengeance, but for closure. When asked if I wanted to make a victim impact statement, I spoke briefly about the journey from betrayal to rebuilding. What happened in those woods was intended to end my life, I told the court. Instead, it became the beginning of a new one. I lost a mother but found my own strength, found genuine support, found purpose in helping others. I'm not defined by what was done to me, but by what I choose to do next. My father moved closer the following spring, buying a small property about 30 minutes from the cabin. Having family nearby who genuinely cared brought healing I hadn't known I needed. Marcus and I expanded both the photography business and my advocacy work, finding balance between public engagement and private peace. The cabin evolved too, with ramps, adapted fixtures, and eventually a proper studio space where I could pursue my own creative work alongside his. Our relationship deepened gradually, built on mutual respect and shared purpose rather than the rescue dynamic that initiated it. When romance eventually blossomed, it grew from genuine partnership rather than dependency or obligation. On the 1-year anniversary of the abandonment, we hiked to the original clearing where I'd been left. The journey was difficult but important, a reclamation of power over a place that had once represented my greatest vulnerability. Standing in that now ordinary forest space, I realized the profound truth of my healing journey. Sometimes the people we expect to love us the most fail catastrophically, while strangers become family through choices made daily. Family isn't just blood, it's who stays when survival seems impossible. It's who believes in your strength when you've forgotten it exists. I thought this place would feel haunted, I told Marcus as we prepared to leave the clearing. But it's just woods. The power was never in the place. He nodded understanding. The power was always in you. Your choices, your resilience. As we made our way back to the cabin, to our shared life built from the aftermath of betrayal, I felt genuine gratitude for the journey, difficult as it had been. I had lost a mother but found myself, lost security but gained authenticity, lost imposed limitations but gained true freedom. Have you ever experienced a betrayal that ultimately led to something better? Sometimes our worst moments become unexpected doorways to our best lives. If my story resonated with you today, please drop a like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one, and your experiences help others feel less alone in their own healing journeys. Thank you for walking this path with me today, and remember, sometimes what seems like an ending is really just the first step toward a better beginning.